So I'm having to put this link back up. There we go. We'll see. Okay. Anyways, we'll see. Otherwise, I'll post it. Okay, so let's work through some of these questions. All right. So a couple questions that I had. We'll see if anybody jumps on. I don't know why it wouldn't let me actually use the link that I set up, which was frustrating. But we'll do this anyways. So one person jumped on. There we go. Well, then I appreciate you. Okay, so questions I'm going to be answering. So a couple of things. One guy asked about if he has a 6.5 Creed bolt gun, if he should build a gas gun. And then the other question that somebody posed was slant dope. So the drop based off of elevation. And so shooting at an angle down and throw some more out there. So a couple things. Bolt gun versus gun. And I get asked this a lot, which is like, and if you have one, should you buy the other? Gas guns are inherently harder to drive. And I say drive as in, dude, these are mechanical objects, that have to have a mechanical function happen to operate. So bolts unlocking, firing pins dropping, reciprocating mass, springs managing the function of the weapon. And so with a bolt gun, literally through manipulating the bolt, you've basically recocked a spring that is then held on a sear, and that's it. And when you pull the trigger, a spring drops. Nothing else happens while the bullet is leaving the gun, and so your recoil impulse tends to be a lot sharper. Or shorter, anyways, because you don't have the recoil or the bullet leaving and then all of these mechanical functions happening inside the gun while to make it function to then get back on your sight picture. And so I was just talking about to some law enforcement guys at this last class. And I said, honestly, for me, I think that there's for doing that job, that there's almost no use for a short action bolt action rifle anymore. I just don't. I really think that the accuracy of a gas gun has got to the point where, now here's the asterisk, given enough training to maintain proficiency, I really think that bolt guns in the short action configuration kind of lose any benefit that they had, aside from the fact that you can spend less time training to maintain a better level of accuracy, but you lose all the other things that gas guns give you: magazine capacity, faster follow-up shots, all those things. And so it's a trade-off, right? And so I watch a lot of guys who come from AR-15s and they go into AR-10s and find really quickly that they go, hey, I heard these guns were accurate. Why am I not accurate with the gun? And it's like, well, I can put that gun on a tripod and free recoil that sucker. And as long as that reticle doesn't move from me squeezing the trigger, it's going to shoot a stupid tight group. But the reason why that gun is inaccurate is the monkey behind the metal. And so it's realizing where the limitations are. And if you aren't very tuned up on how to drive a gas gun, well, I shoot carbines all the time. It's not the same thing. Shooting a carbine at 5 yards does not immediately translate to shooting a AR-10 at 100, 200, 300, 500, 1,000, whatever. Very different. It's still, the jerk behind the trigger. Absolutely. So it's the recoil management's there. The thing is but a lot of guys like to free recoil bolt guns. You can't free recoil a gas gun, not to maintain any kind of consistent sight picture after for follow up. So there's a trade off. Now back to the original question: if you have a gas gun um, and you want to shoot bigger targets, not because the gun can't, because it's harder to do, uh, I almost would venture to say what you're doing is you're buying a redundant capability that is less dependent on you as a shooter. And so, yeah, if you're going to shoot PRS or something, like shooting it with a gas gun's hard. Uh, you're going to get eaten up on the small targets. Whereas some of these guys shooting like 25-pound 6.5s are going to get are going to have an advantage over maintaining accuracy. If you are trying to do other things like gas gun matches and stuff, then more power to you. But I think you're buying a redundant capability. So it really depends what's your why. And if you already have a AR-10, but you're trying to get into long range and you're trying to shoot PRS, then I would tell you probably sell your AR-10 and get a bolt gun, unless that money's not really what you're worried about. But I just think 2.65s is redundant capability. And so if you were going to get another bolt gun, I would tell you to get a different capability, 6.5 PRC, 300 Norma, get something that's, I'm trying to go back and read your comment I just missed. There we go. Let's see, live chat. Yeah, there we go. Now I can see them. The biggest thing for me with large trim gassers was all the mass going forward during follow through. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you have to maintain body contact to that gun during the entire cycle of operations. And so what a lot of guys do is they tend to get really weak on like 5.56 guns. It's super easy. There's not as much mass. And so guys, it's kind of like running like a comp 2011 and going to an uncomped Glock. Like guys can get really lazy in their shooting a gun that doesn't require as much physicality behind it. And then when they do, then they get owned. And so okay. What does a Kestrel give you versus an iPhone Applied Ballistics app and wind meter? Cool. I'll touch that in a sec. I don't know why it's hiding all of them. Okay. Anyways, so angle fire. So hopefully that answered or didn't answer the guy's question that asked that, but angle fire. So basically, what we used to talk about was if you're shooting down a slope, is that people think of it as it's a distance covered by its effective gravity over the surface of the earth. And so even though time in flight is longer than distance covered, the effective gravity is only managed by its duration over the surface of the earth. Now, this is where it kind of gets weird. Wind effect is actually time of flight based. And so it's not like gravity's effect is surface of the earth. Wind effect is time of flight. So the long and short of it is, somebody asked this question, and I put up an article that had a whole bunch of tables. But the thing is basically a cosine problem. And so you can look it up and Google it. It's called the Rifleman's Rule or the Improved Rifleman's Rule. The Rifleman's Rule is whatever you lays, you figure out what the angle is you're shooting down at, and then you apply the cosine to the distance. What they found is that kind of starts to deviate at like 500 or 600 yards. The Improved Rifleman's Rule is you figure out the distance, you run that distance in your ballistic app, and you get your data, so your dope, your drop in mils, and then you apply the drop in mils to the cosine, and it ends up being a lot more precise. And so you just kind of add the extra step of, instead of getting the distance and then taking the distance and then running it through your data, you get all the way to the data and then apply your cosine to the data, and then that should give you shooting slants. But the thing is that if you look up what the cosines are for actual angled fire, it's 25 degrees or more is really where it starts to affect you. I mean, really, the cosines underneath that are like 90% plus. And so it's almost no effect. And 25 degrees is significantly steeper than what people think it is. Like, this is 0, this is 25, that's 45. Like, you have to think about what the actual effect, um, or how steep 25 degrees is, because it's really freaking steep. And so if you just think you have a little bit of angle or something like 10 or 15 degrees, which is still fairly steep if you were standing on a 15-degree incline, um, dude, aim bottom of the plate and pull the trigger. And don't take my word for it, go do it. Uh, ballistic apps. What does the app give you versus the Kestrel? The Kestrel gives you all the accuracy first stuff, for one, first thing I can think of. The other thing is it's live data. It's also the ability to push your profiles back and forth. It also, ballistic Kestrels can feed the HUD and a bunch of other stuff. The Kestrels feed some of the ballistic solvers in some of the laser rangefinders, because some of the laser rangefinders don't have onboard weather reading and some do. Um, the app and a weather meter uh, can work. Um, it just doesn't have all the functionality. But the thing is I actually like the functionality of the app better for some things, or it gives me more information in some ways. Like the Applied Ballistics app gives you a linear path, which is where your bullet's residing at that distance, um, above or below your point of aim based off what your 0 was. So it's a really good way to answer all those questions I get about like riser heights and that kind of stuff. Uh, I just run it in the Applied Ballistics app. There's also some cool things about like sharing. You can text people your um, data cards and stuff from your phone, which is neat. And all your profiles can be backed up, probably both ways. They back up from the Kestrel app, but they also back up from the iPhone. So honestly, I have both, and I push people to buy both because they kind of give you some slightly different functionality. But Kestrels are badass tools, and a little easier to use and manage as far as like live reading of wind over just an app with a little keychain fob or whatever. I hope that answered your question. I've got one of those little things, those little dongles. I never use it. I use a Kestrel, or I just pull from the closest weather station. The app just looks atrocious. I don't think it looks that bad. I don't know what you guys are looking at on Android. I've had a couple people. The Android also doesn't have some functionality, actually, just so you know. Um, what's up, Patrick? You guys got any more questions? This one's short. I mean, you got a bunch of guys threw up a bunch of questions that either I answered on the last one or had fairly easy answers. Somebody asked me about the difference between being like a platoon, troop, team lead sniper, etc. When I was in, um, it was it basically broke down to like the number of snipers I was responsible for and like how much training I was supposed to coordinate. So, like in a platoon, there's 4 snipers, and so I was the lead of 4. Basically, I just made sure that we were buying the right stuff for the guys, and was the senior of 4 snipers. In a troop, I was the most senior of 8. At a team, I was the most senior of like 25 to 30, and then snipers, and then so I was managing training and procurement for that skill set underneath like the team, which is like 150 guys, and then total with like 20 of those 25, 8 per troop, 3 troops, so whatever, 25 guys. uh, so I was managing that, and then when I went to go take over NSW, or the schoolhouse rather, and was given that role, then I was managing all training sustainment standards, uh, for all of NSW, uh, including, DMX had a turbo, and he did all the weapons and stuff for them. But as far as our schoolhouse and sustainment and stuff was driven by us at the schoolhouse. Let me see. Let's see. I have a dumb question. Did you becoming a sniper seem more or less impressive considering weapons in current day tech? Lee Harvey Oswald. Jesus. Um, honestly, I'd have to go back and look at it again. I mean, I've watched the Discovery Channel special. Uh, I just I don't geek out over like presidential assassination shit. So I don't actually know the specs of how far it was, grassy knoll, etc. Yeah, whatever. I just honestly don't look that much. Okay. How do you know how high to set your cheek piece, and what does it matter for recoil management? So cheek piece is so the way that rifle setup starts with length of pull. So you set the length of pull first, and the length of pull is the distance between the face of the trigger and the back of the buttstock. And what it does is the easy way to do it is crack your arm 90 degrees, adjust the buttstock until you have a nice neutral wrist position, a decent grip on the grip, and that your uh, trigger finger falls in a position you want. The position I tell people is that for me personally on trigger placement is that everybody used to be like, you want your trigger right here, right in the fat in the middle of your finger. I actually have found that what I'm more worried about is the orientation of this bone being parallel with the bore of the rifle. And because of that, because if you have to try to get this trigger pad on the face of the trigger by pushing your finger out, it makes it so this joint right here gets hyperextended. And then you're trying to pull back into the bottom joint, and it's really hard to get movement straight into the rear. The other comparison I always give is like, have you ever been to a gym and had a Bosu ball? Like, the balls that have like they're half cut off and they're like, try doing a squat on one of those things. Like, how much pressure are you changing to maintain equal pressure as you squat? Well, think about that. Think of your finger like a Bosu ball. And so as you're trying to pull straight back, all this fat in your fingers rolling, and you're inputting side to side pressure as you pull. Um, and so what I tend to do is I tend to run the first joint up against the side of the trigger. Um, breathing techniques. Cool. Hold on. Uh, I tend to run my finger up against the trigger right here. And so, and what it does is I'm worried about this so that this joint is bending more at a 90 degrees because it makes it easier for me to pull straight into the rear this way than if I hyperextend this and try to pull this way, if that makes sense. So anyways, you're talking about cheek piece. So that set length of pull so that you have a nice neutral wrist position, you get good trigger finger placement. Then I put the scope on, and then I move the scope forward and back. Um, hold on. I move the scope forward and back until I get a good sight picture. And then the cheek piece is more for consistent placement on the stock. And so you want to make it so that you stop in that same consistent spot every time. And so there's certain spots on your face that are going to grab better than others. And so I don't really think of it as a recoil mitigation technique as much as it's just so that your face is on the gun in the same spot every time. And so your face and your eye settles naturally behind the optic without having to push your face down or try to start floating it up on your cheek, and you just don't have good cheek weld. So that'll lead to parallax issues. Um, and then so scope forward and back, and then I kind of play with this until you've got from prone on max magnification. I want a clear edges, but I want to be as far forward in that eye box while maintaining the clear edges as I possibly can be. And then once I get that, because what happens is as you lay prone, you're as far forward on the buttstock as you're possibly going to be. And so as I get up and I uh, get into like barricades, standing, whatever, up off my belly, kneeling, your head's going to pull back the buttstock on the buttstock, right? Not back the buttstock, but back on the cheek piece. And so basically, as you move back on the cheek piece, you're going to move back in the eye box. And so if you, from prone, set yourself up where you're in the middle of the eye box, you're only giving yourself a little bit of backwards movement. And so as you stand up and you get into a different position, still trying to maintain a good recoil management by not splaying your body, which pushes your face forward on the stock, then what's going to happen is you're going to move back. And the more you move back with a tighter eye box, you're going to be at the back of the eye box and fighting parallax. And so once you set up a guy's gun the right way and they start feeling that, they're like, oh, okay. And it makes more sense. Okay, let me see what else you guys have been asking. Okay. I was late to the live. Do you have any breathing techniques you can share when your heart rate is in zone 3 or 4? Dude, it's just like anything else. Honestly, as you're starting to get to a stage or you're getting into a position, it's deep breaths, man. It's not like you have to like do, when like labored breathing techniques. It's literally just dude, give your body some air. A couple deep breaths will take huge amounts of will drop your heart rate significantly. I mean, you can practice it all you want. Dude, go run a sprint and then do versus and give your body that big dose of oxygen, and you're going to watch your heart go pretty fast. It also comes down to how good of shape you are. I mean, uh, let's be real here. If you're the most exercise you do is to get off the couch and go get another beer from your fridge, your heart rate's going to be going for a while. When you say mils, get the mils and drop to add into the cosine to get a precise solution for angle shooting. What does that formula look like? How do you add mils into equation? You don't add mils. You take your mils and you multiply it by the cosine being point something. And so if you have 7 mils or 10 mils at 1,000 and you need your cosine is 0.89, then you multiply 0.89 by 10, which would give you 8.9 mils. That's how cosines work. You don't add. You just take your drop and then multiply it by the cosine required. I'll throw that cosine thing up in the Patreon after I get off here. Okay. What rifles do you see ran at gas gun matches? So I haven't ran. Last time I ran a gas gun match with PRS, and so PRS was very different. And actually, when I ran a gas gun, it was because my bolt gun went down, and so I was actually running a gas gun in a bolt gun match. From what I've seen in the matches right now is there's magnification limits, caliber limits. There's a bunch of different things going on, and it depends on. Yeah, I mean, he's answering himself. A lot of guys are running 5.56, and then I think there's some open classes. I have to look it up because I'm going to start shooting those matches too. 6 arc and stuff, and then that new 6 Mac or whatever. But yeah, there you go. Let's see. I was really struggling with that at the class on Monday. Prone, the rifle scopes that I was borrowing worked fine, but as soon as I had to shoot from another position, I had to crane my neck. Yeah. Well, that's the thing is people go to try to set up their optic where they're like, you move your head forward, move your head back, and they want to be comfortably in the middle. But it's like prone is the most consistent position you're going to be. And so you're going to be the least consistent as you stand up. It's because of all kinds of things, whether you're craning your body, trying to get, contact on the front of the gun to mitigate muzzle movement or reticle movement, positions of your legs, all these things come into play and then adjust where your head is on the buttstock. And so he's also a good dude. So old trigonometry down there knows his shit. And so go talk to him. He's been shooting a bunch of matches, then hosts a bunch of them too. So good guy to hit up. Let me see what else we got here. Trigger explanation was good. I agree. 6.5 Creedmoor, quantified performance. Joe nailed it. Yep. Yeah, rifle setup. I mean, I can just talk about some of it until you guys get a couple more things for me to answer. The biggest things I saw this weekend was actually I'm gonna talk about zeros in a sec, and Veracity can jump in on me with me. So the biggest things I saw this weekend were guys listening to non-precision rifle shooters about precision rifle, which makes no damn sense, and purchases. So that was awesome. We ended up with a guy with a RPR with dude, 64s are badass. Anyways, he had an RPR with a Leupold Mark IV with a mill reticle and MOA turrets. And I don't look at everybody's gun to see what the setup was. And so since the turrets were an MOA, assumed that his optic was an MOA. And so none of his holds made sense and none of his data was tracking until I looked down and was like, let me see your reticle. And I was like, that makes way more sense. So I was like, you're trapped 12 years ago when we were still shooting mil MOA. I said, go sell that scope to somebody with a cloner boner and buy something that's either an MOA or mils. Pretty much other than that, I'm going to have to do a video on rifle setup here soon. I think it'd be helpful for students in general as a whole, but just because I don't have time in a 2-day class for everybody to like take their scopes off and put them back on. We had to fix a bunch of guys because their eye relief was all jacked up, or so I moved their scopes while we were zeroing. But it made the zeroing take like 2 hours, 2.5 hours. So it makes for a really long day. I can still do the video and nobody will watch it though, or half the people will watch it, and then I still have to deal with the other half. So we'll see. Oh, let's talk about zeros. Somebody just hit me up today. I know it'd be nobody on here, but I'm going to talk about it anyways. 25, 300, or 5,200 zeros. Stop. If your gun has an optic on it, has a scope on it, just do 100 yard zero, 100 meter zero, whatever you want to talk in. Just do 100. It's the closest point where you get no max ord, and that all of your holds will be holdovers. And then take a class and go figure out how to use your reticle, because you have this great thing that's underneath the center point of aim. And a lot of the new reticles or new optics, it's called a Christmas tree. And that Christmas tree gives you refined aiming points and if you know how to understand it and use it, then you can give yourself whatever BZO, hold, whatever you want to increase your first round impact without having to dial on some stupid 25, 300 or 5,200, especially since guys, I still had 2 guys show up with 193 risers with LPVOs. Stop that shit too. Large calibers, unless I'm doing ELR with it, it's 100. Like 6 Creedmoor, 6.5 Creedmoor, everything, 300 Norma, it's all 100. Add more cant to your base. Yeah, I mean, run like a 30 or 40 MOA base more than, like, yeah, if you have 375 Shy Tech, you're shooting King of 2 mile, I mean, fine. But let's see. 168 burgers. I'm just seeing what you guys are talking about. Yeah, that new chrono from Garmin looks badass. Well, Veracity's already tried it. Too many projects. Too many damn projects, and I'm behind a bit. I gotta teach a few more classes, and then, but because I already have a lab radar and 2 magneto speeds, but those little guys look badass. I'm gonna have to get, I think, probably at least 2 of them. I think those are the first, like, really packable chrono that wouldn't be annoying to have at a class, because magneto speeds take forever to set up and like switch them between guns. It's annoying. They're great to take to a match if you're going to be shooting for zeroing. Lab radars are enormous, and so like it's the first one that's best of one, but small, and best of the other in one. I'll be there soon. I'm gonna go shoot QP in some of those matches shortly. I'm only home for like 4 days, then I head off to Texas. But you guys got any more questions? I'm about to pour some tequila and smoke a cigar, but I apologize that link didn't work. I have no idea why YouTube made me start a new link. That was retarded. But this has only been 30 minutes, but I think we answered some good questions. But I'll take some more if you got them. I had 2 others at the range today. Use it today. Plopped it down next to them and turned it on. Takes less than 5 minutes to turn on and go. Cool. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's worth $600 then. I mean, it's worth $1,200. It sounds like that I'm actually going to get that FNC check left yesterday, so that's cool. USA. I'd of course leave it to B&T to like make obscure rails for guns that like almost nobody has in the US. Uh, but they have like this bitchin' ass quad rail, and so I contacted them, and they're going to see if they can order it from uh, the um, Switzerland. So that'd be sweet. I'd basically be the only dude in the U.S. with a B&T rail and an FNC, uh, and then I'll let everyone know if I find a way to break it. I mean, Garmin makes pretty robust stuff. I'm less worried about that than I am about some stuff. Um, but reticle selection, mill only. It is. It's personal preference on what subtensions makes most sense for you. Buy a scope that's mill, and buy a scope that has aiming points off the vertical crosshair. And for the most part, don't buy wind dots. So, I mean, really, I mean, dude, like with Leupold, like the PR2s are fine. With ZCO, it's like the MPCT3X is the one I like. Mill XT for Night Force. Most of the Vortex mill reticles, as long as they are Christmas tree, they're all fine. EBR7, um, a lot of those are fine. H59 is fine. It's just really busy. It's but I prefer with Night Force the Mill XT. Um, Bushnell's got a couple good ones. I've heard that Zeiss is really coming in strong. I want to get one of the new Zeiss scopes because Zeiss's glass is fantastic. And I saw them at SHOT Show, and they actually had a decent reticle in them. So I'm curious to see what it looks like, but I haven't got one yet. Primary Arms is supposed to send me one of their 6-30s that has a Christmas tree. Haven't seen it yet. Um, they were super excited to send me something, and they sent me like a 1-8 with a BDC, and I was like, I'm not even taking this out of the box, so I sent it back. And then they were like, oh yeah, but we're trying to the G4 reticle and the XRS is the one I'm eyeing. Yeah, I mean, if it says G, it's because George came up with it. Um, they're good. Those guys, George George has been shooting for a very long time, and is one of the reasons why I ever started shooting matches. So those reticles are good. There's a really good reticle in the skimmer reticle in Calais. I really hope their optics have gotten more robust. The last time I shot with them was probably 7 or 8 years ago now, 6, 7 years ago, and they were a bit fragile. It's kind of what I hear sometimes about tangent theta, but I haven't not personally experienced it. But I have seen and experienced the Calais go down, just not the new ones. So I'm always down for companies to fix their stuff. The Solus, I put 100 rounds through it, and then I was going to shoot it more at this class, and then a guy who had a 6.5 Creedmoor gas gun, the gas gun's barrel was like dink, 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 barrel nut came loose. And so I let him run it all weekend. And so it's probably got 300 rounds on it now. And so I got to give it a good cleaning. It's probably not going to happen before I head off to Texas in a few days, but give it a good cleaning and then get it back on the range and shoot some more of that G9 out of it. And I have some prime and some Hornady, and I got some of the 6.5 Creedmoor from AAC. So I'm going to see what it likes out of that stuff, and we'll go from there. Oh, you couldn't pick up? Oh, that's weird. Dude, I love Mill XT. Mill XT is super easy to use. Uh, I also really like the zero compromise. Um, I really like the zero compromise reticle, that MPCT, but I'm also not super wealthy. Don't let Instagram fool you. I mean, fuck. I lately a lot of it's just been product work, and so I've got a bunch of stuff in lately, but it's not like I had a whole bunch of money out, uh, which is nice. I mean, but I try to tell people it's like, yeah, but the thing is that I still have to find time to shoot it all, and if you aren't adding a capability, it's just redundancy. So yeah, that one. That's you know what, and I like Frank, but that yeah, that thing up top annoys me. he's tried to send me a scope a couple times, and I'm like, dude, I won't shoot that. Like, I don't need it. So, God bless him and trying to, make his way in the world. Just not my thing personally. But anyways, guys, yeah, I don't think the X models don't. It's the 3X. The 3X was the one I just looked at. I'd love to get a couple of their FDE 3Xs because why not? They're FDE. But it sounds like we're going to keep it a short one today. But I appreciate it, guys. Hopefully that was helpful in some way. Veracity, always appreciate you, brother, for jumping on. Always a good time. I'm going to try to do these guys like every 2 or 3 weeks. I should be able to do another one. Let's see. Yeah, another one beginning of November before I head off to Army contract. And I'll talk to you about that shortly. And so, yeah, I'm going to go do that. And then basically I'm almost off, aside from one class in Florida in December until like after SHOT Show. And so I actually get to take a breath and spend some family time. But as always, thanks, guys. Hopefully this is helping you out in some way. And I'll hopefully be able to post this if I don't fuck it up posting to YouTube like I usually do. So thanks, guys. I'll catch you next time.